Welcome to another video. Now I've had a number of requests to show my Bosch Series 8 oven in action. Now tomorrow I need to take a cake to an event, so I thought to myself, I know, let's show you the auto bake feature of the Bosch ovens. Hopefully it will answer a few questions that I've been getting. I plan to show you what it is, how it works. I'll give you a preview of the different auto bake settings that the oven has. Then we'll bake a cake. This won't be a cooking video though. And then finally, we will look at the actual auto bake sequence in action, and you will see the before and after results. Now, spoiler alert, I have used the auto bake feature a number of times and I have been completely happy with the results every single time. They always seem to work, never had any issues of underbaked cakes. I've not tried it with biscuits and things like that, but I have tried it with a number of cakes that normally I will be a little bit apprehensive to use an auto bake feature with, because the cakes I was making were for a special event, and obviously if they went wrong that would be a disaster and I'd have to start again. But I kind of trusted the oven and just got on with it. In my first video for my oven, I did show you the settings on the screen and the auto bake features. However, I thought I'd go into a little bit more detail, specifically with the baking section. So when you switch the oven on, you are, in my case, I've defaulted it to the cooking menu so I can select the type of heat I want and I just get on with cooking. However, because we are using the assist feature today, we go into menu and we select the assist option. So here you get your assist, which I have gone through before, cakes, bread and pizza, which is what we're going to look at today, bakes and soufflés, frozen products, then you have your poultry, meat and fish, and then finally you have your vegetables. Remember, when you plug the auto roast probe in, these sections do change because the meat section in particular changes to adapt to the roast probe. So let's have a closer look at the cake section. So here we have cakes, small baked items, biscuits, bread rolls and bread, savoury cakes, pizza and quiche. Today I'm going to bake a cake, so when you select cake it gives you the option of either a cake in a deep tin, so I'm assuming that would be if you were baking, say, a Christmas cake in a large high edged tin, cakes in shallow tins, which is probably the normal go-to one, where you are using a tin which is small, and the ones that I'll be using today. Cakes on a baking tray, so I'm guessing if you are making a sheet pan style cake, and then of course a pavlova, which we know is a meringue whipped up idea. So if I select cakes in deep tins, you get a nice image. It says that the baking sensor is activated and that it is an automatic cooking program. It gives you a cook's tip and it says the number 2. So before even I look at the tip, I know that when I place a cake into the oven, I need to make sure that it's on level 2. So if I look at cook's tip, tin or dish on wire rack, on level 2. Okay. So if I go back to cake, cakes in shallow tins is identical to what you've just seen. There we go. This time cook's tip on level 3, so slightly higher up in the oven. Cakes on a baking tray, again level 3. Universal pan. So what that means is the oven comes with a ceramic pan which is classed as the universal pan, and they kind of would like you to use that as your baking pan. However, you could put any pan into it. More about that later. And then finally pavlova, cook's tip, baking tray level 3. Again, just like before, this time it doesn't use the automatic baking sensor, as you can see, because it has a start time and it has a duration and it has an end time. So 2 hours 5 minutes for the auto feature. So not all of them will use the baking sensor. So if we continue to look, small baked items, puff pastry, choux pastry, muffins, a leavened cake, so that's a cake that uses some sort of leavening agent like yeast, shortbread and scones. So puff pastry, baking sensor, cook's tip, baking level 3. Choux pastry, so your lovely chocolate covered profiteroles. This time you have an adjust option. So sometimes, notice that there's no baking sensor with this one, you can just adjust it. So you can actually adjust the temperature. I always find it a bit strange that it's supposed to be an automatic feature, but yet it lets you adjust the temperature. It doesn't quite make it automatic, which is a bit of a shame. I'd love it if it just did it. Anyway, let's go back. So, muffins, baking sensor, leavened cake, baking sensor again, shortbread, no baking sensor this time, top and bottom heat 170, and scones. Baking sensor with the scones. I have made scones before but never actually used the auto bake feature, which is a shame. I forgot that it was on here. So next time I make some scones I will use the baking sensor and see if it makes a much better result. Okay, let's go back to biscuits. Meringue or biscuits. Let's do biscuits. So 4D hot air, no baking sensor this time, just 150 degrees cooking. Let's have a look at meringue. Will that be the same as the pavlova? 5 minutes less than the pavlova setting. So it does look like it is slightly different, but it is basically the same as the pavlova cooking. Okay, I should have pressed the middle button to go back instead of having to keep repeating myself. Cakes. So bread and bread rolls, bread and flatbread. Baking sensor for bread, cook's tip, baking tray 3. Go back. Bread, just standard bread in a tin. Automatic cooks stage 2. And finally flatbread. Again, automatic level 3. So let's go back to the categories. And finally, savoury cakes, pizza and quiche. Savoury cakes and quiche and pizza. And you have a picture of a pizza. So let's look at the savoury cakes. Notice how the screen isn't as responsive as it should be. In fact, it seems to not be working at all now, which is slightly disappointing, especially when I'm filming. Let's try pizza. So pizza works, we'll try the other one later. So pizza is automatic, which is interesting because in the past I've gone to the pizza. This oven does have a separate pizza bake feature. And we'll try, there you go, so quiche has worked this time. So again, baking sensor for the quiche. So slightly slow there. Bakes and soufflés, if I just have a quick look, sometimes, so soufflé in individual moulds, no, that one doesn't. Sometimes it does have the baking sensor, even though it's not in the cake and bake section. Okay, so there we go. That was an overview of the baking options that you can use in this oven. Obviously, if you are baking a cake, then you just select cake in a tin. Doesn't matter what that cake may be, whether it be a fruit cake or a flour-based sponge cake or anything really. It's simply select cake, pop it in and off it goes. Let's have a look inside the oven now. Inside the oven we have the baking sensor, which is located at the very top in the corner just there. Please forgive the state of my oven. I should run the cleaning cycle before I did this video, but I simply don't have the time to do it today. How does the baking sensor work? Well, I've done a little bit of research, and what I found out is that the sensor is in fact an extremely sensitive moisture detector. Now, whenever you place a product into the oven, like cake batter for example, obviously that has a high value of water in it. As the cake bakes, the water evaporates, creating moisture in the air. Now the moisture sensor detects that level of moisture, and as the cake bakes, the moisture level will depreciate and get lower, meaning that the cake is rising and getting more and more baked. Now, obviously the oven needs to know exactly what you are baking. That's why there are a number of different options to select whether it's biscuits or cakes in a big tin or a small tin. But I would assume that based on built-in moisture level variance, the oven will know exactly when the cake or biscuit or whatever it may be is baked correctly using that information from the moisture or baking sensor. I did read in the manual that it says to not use silicone baking products, so baking tins made of silicone, in the oven at all. It says that apparently that can damage the baking sensor. Not sure how it means it will damage it. Maybe you know, pop a note if you know. I thought perhaps that silicone releases some sort of, I don't know, moisture, or releases some sort of vapor which may interfere with the moisture sensor, or maybe it interferes with the amount of moisture that the cake you're baking releases, which can cause strange results. I've never dared risk it. I've just done what it says. I've never put silicone in. I tend to stick with light coloured baking tins. I find that dark coloured ones absorb the heat more and tend to over brown or overcook your cake or whatever it may be. That's the oven, how it works. I suppose now we better bake a cake. I'm baking a chocolate fudge cake, and it is my go-to recipe from plug here, Nigella Lawson's Nigella Bites book. As you can see from the page, this, which is falling out, this is a well-loved recipe that I have made a number of times, and I pretty much know off by heart, but I still like to look at the recipe anyway. I'll put a link to this recipe in the notes below. It is available completely free on Nigella's website, so if you wanted to make it, then feel free to. It is a very, very nice chocolate cake. The chocolate cake recipe starts with preheat the oven to 180 or gas mark 4. Now, I'm not going to do that because, as you've seen, the auto bake features don't necessarily need you to preheat the oven. In fact, sometimes they don't even work if the oven is already warm and you try to use it. So I'm going to ignore that step, and let's just crack on and bake this cake. That's the cakes ready to go through the oven. So, power on, menu, assist, cake spread, cake, shallow tins, cook tip, level 3, level 3, level 3, ready to go. Let's place the cakes in. Now it's not quite wide enough for them to go next door to each other exactly, so I'm just going to leave them at a diagonal like that because, you know, why not? Close, close, go. Baking sensor active, do not open the door. If you do open the door during the cooking process, it stops, resets, that's that. You can't close the door and press continue, it just simply stops because you've let all the moisture out, so the baking sensor basically hasn't got a clue and it won't work anymore. So, cakes are in, timer has started automatically. In the book, these cakes normally take about 40-45 minutes to bake at 180 with the fan going around. The fan has started. It doesn't tell you what program it is using. It doesn't tell you if it's top or bottom, fan at the back or altogether or mixture. It doesn't tell you any of that, nor does it seem to tell you any of that in the instruction manuals either. But let's let it just get on with it and we'll come back and check every so often and see how it's getting on. Let's fast forward a little bit. So we are 18 minutes in and everything looks quite promising. A nice even rise on both cakes. 38 minutes. Still cooking well. We've domed up a little bit higher. What I do tend to find is that the split in the dome that you get will sink naturally down and form quite a nice, reasonably flat surface. 47 minutes. Should be about ready. We have just finished. Now it says you can continue cooking if you choose for another 10 minutes or you can finish. So right now what you should do is open, check the doneness. Yeah, springs back when touched. So I would say that is perfectly cooked. So I select finish. Enjoy your meal. This now needs to come out and cool, and I need to crack on making some chocolate frosting. So as I said, the cake has settled down. It is still nice and light when you touch it, but it has flattened and sunk, which is what you actually want. It has come away from the sides naturally, so it is ready to be tipped out of the tin and cool. But these are two very nice squidgy chocolate fudge cakes ready for their dressing up chocolate fudge sauce. one completed chocolate cake. Hope you found that video interesting. Any comments whatsoever about how the oven works or any of the features, if you really want to, about baking the cake, then please put them in the comments below and I shall get back to you. I am very prompt at doing that. Yes, I need to now get this off there onto a plate and pop it in the fridge to set, ready to be taken to the event tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching. See you again soon.